A fat woman's husband signed a divorce with his mistress by his side, and the judge made them regret it. The pen slid across the paper with an ease that chilled the entire room. Marcus didn't tremble. He didn't hesitate. His eyes were fixed on the blonde next to him, who was smiling as if she had won the lottery. On the other side of the table, Rachel watched everything in silence, her hands folded in her lap, taking deep breaths to keep from collapsing right there. 8 years of marriage evaporating in 30 seconds of signing. Marcus's lawyer pushed the papers toward Rachel with a fake professional smile. "Your turn, Mrs. Thompson." The word ma'am came out of her mouth like a disguised insult. The office smelled of cold coffee and expensive perfume, probably that of Vanessa, who looked like she had bathed in Chanel before coming to humiliate her boyfriend's ex-wife. Rachel picked up the pen, but before she could touch the paper, she heard low laughter. That laugh. Vanessa, the lover, now Marcus's official girlfriend, whispered something in his ear, loud enough for Rachel to hear. "Finally, you can eat real food at home, love. Not that oily crap she used to make." Marcus didn't reprimand her. He laughed too. The same man who 3 years ago had asked Rachel to marry him, saying she was the most beautiful woman he had ever seen. The same man who cried at the altar when she entered in a white dress. The same man who now couldn't even look in her direction. Rachel closed her eyes for a second. Just one. When he opened them again, he signed the papers in firm handwriting. No tears, no drama. Her lawyer, a 50-something man named Henry Castellanos, lightly touched her shoulder in silent solidarity. "Perfect," said Marcus's lawyer, picking up the documents with sharp red fingernails. "The final hearing with the judge is scheduled for 3 weeks from now. It's just a formality. Division of assets has already been agreed, no children involved. It will be quick." "Quickly," Vanessa repeated, running her hand down Marcus's arm possessively. "Just as it should have been from the beginning. 8 years wasted." She looked directly at Rachel for the first time. Imagine being imprisoned for 8 years with someone who doesn't even take good care of themselves. Marcus's lawyer, a 40-year-old woman named Diane, cleared her throat slightly, clearly uncomfortable with the comment, but said nothing. After all, Marcus was paying $500 an hour for her silence too. Rachel grabbed her bag and stood up. She was 1.65 meters tall and weighed 95 kilos, figures that Vanessa had discovered going through the house's drawers during one of the visits she made when Rachel was still at work. Numbers that became a joke between Marcus and his lover. Numbers that were now weapons aimed straight at her heart. "Oh, and just so you know," Vanessa continued, fixing her platinum blonde hair, "I've already picked out the new furniture for the living room. That horrible couch you bought is going to be donated. Marcus said it sank every time you sat on it." More laughs. Henry stood up abruptly, making his chair scrape the floor. "That is enough. My client signed what was required. There is no reason to continue this meeting." Sure, Marcus said, waving his hand as if dismissing a maid. "Have a good life, Rachel. I hope you find someone who likes more structured women." Structured, classy code for fat. Rachel stopped at the door. For a moment it looked like she was going to turn around and say something. Marcus even prepared himself for a scandal, for tears, for pleas, but she just took a deep breath and left, leaving only the sound of her low heels echoing in the hallway. Vanessa let out a victorious laugh. She didn't even fight. How pathetic. "Yeah," Marcus agreed, but something deep in his chest tightened for a second. Just a second, then it passed. In the hallway, Henry waited for Rachel to take 3 breaths before speaking. He knew that look. He had seen it on dozens of clients throughout his 25-year career. That look of someone who has just lost everything. "Are you well?" "Perfectly fine," Rachel lied. But something deep in his green eyes flashed for a second. It wasn't sadness. It was something else. Something sharp and calculated. "Henry, you said you know the judge who will preside over the final hearing, right? Judge Morrison." "Yes, we have worked together for years. He is a fair man, well respected." "Why?" Rachel smiled for the first time in weeks. A small, almost imperceptible smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Just curious. Is he married?" Henry frowned, confused by the question. "He was. He got divorced about 5 years ago. Why do you want to know about his personal life?" "Like I said, just curious." Rachel tightened her bag strap and started walking towards the elevator. "See you at the hearing, Henry, and thank you for today. I know it wasn't easy." "Rachel," Henry called to her before she entered the elevator. "If you need anything, call me. I'm here to help." She waved and entered the elevator. As soon as the doors closed, the mask fell. Rachel leaned against the cold metal wall and let out a long, shuddering breath. The hands were shaking. The heart was beating wildly, but the eyes remained dry. There would be no tears. Not now. She took her cell phone out of her bag and looked at the screen for a long moment before opening a specific folder. Inside it, there were 3 PDF documents, 3 time bombs, 3 secrets Marcus thought were buried forever. What Henry didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that Rachel and Judge Morrison had a lot more in common than court cases. They had a story that happened long before Marcus entered her life, a story that was about to become extremely relevant, and over the next 3 weeks Marcus and Vanessa would discover that underestimating a structured woman was the biggest mistake anyone could make. Because Rachel wasn't just a cheated wife, she was a forensic accountant specializing in financial fraud, and during the last 6 months since finding out about the betrayal, she hadn't just been crying, she was investigating. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the outcome of this twist. 2 weeks passed. Marcus was sitting on the new sofa, a white leather Italian model that cost $8,000, with Vanessa curled around him like a contented snake. The house that was once his and Rachel's now smelled of expensive scented candles and unbridled ambition. "Babe, we need to talk about the honeymoon," Vanessa said, running her finger down his chest. "I thought of Santorini, 6 weeks after the hearing, long enough for you to get rid of any trace of it." Marcus took a sip of the whiskey, the third of the night. "Santorini is expensive as hell right now." Vanessa pulled away slightly, her smile freezing. "Dear Marcus, you are a regional sales manager. You always said money was no object." "It's no problem," he replied too quickly. "It's just, with the divorce, things got a little tight. Rachel took half of the joint account. The house is still in both their names until the final hearing." "Wait." Vanessa sat up straight, her blue eyes shining with something dangerous. "Half? Marcus, you told me she wasn't entitled to anything, that you had a prenup." Awkward silence. "Marcus? I never said that exactly," he started, but Vanessa was already on her feet. "Did you lie to me? I quit my job thinking you were rich. You said that as soon as the divorce went through, we would live well, travel, that I wouldn't need to work anymore." Her voice rose 3 octaves. "Vanessa, calm down. I still have good money, just not as much as you thought." "But not as much as I thought?" She threw the pillow at him. "I wouldn't have wasted my time with you if I knew I was going to have to share crumbs with that fat bitch." Marcus stood up, trying to calm her down. It's not like that. Look, I have other sources of income that Rachel doesn't know about. Accounts that aren't in the divorce. We'll be fine, trust me." Vanessa stopped, eyes narrowing. "Other bills? Investments?" The word came out quickly. "Things she never discovered. Everything is safe." This calmed Vanessa down immediately. She returned to the couch, her smile returning. Enough for Santorini, and for that ring you saw last week." Across town, Rachel sat in her rented apartment, a small but tidy space, with 3 monitors in front of her. In one of them, financial spreadsheets. In the other, bank statements. In the third, something that would make any judge lose sleep. His phone rang. It was Sarah, her best friend since college. "Did you eat today?" Sarah asked without even saying hi. "I ate." "Bullshit. I'm going to bring Chinese food there in 20 minutes and you're going to eat it in front of me, understand?" Rachel smiled weakly. "Sarah, I'm fine. Really." "Rachel Elizabeth Turner, you lost 15 pounds in 2 weeks. That's not being well. That's self-destruction." Sarah's voice shook. "I know you're strong. I know you're planning something. But you need to eat. You need to sleep. You need to be human for 5 minutes." The words hit Rachel hard. She looked at her reflection in the dark screen of the 4th monitor. Deep dark circles. Hair tied into a messy bun for 3 days. Same outfit as yesterday. "It's okay," she whispered. 20 minutes. 20 minutes, Sarah confirmed and hung up. Rachel went back to her worksheets, but the tears finally came. Silent. Hot. Furious. She wasn't crying for loss of marriage. She was crying about the 8 years she gave to a man who treated her like dirt as soon as he found a prettier package. But the tears only lasted 2 minutes. Then she cleaned herself up, straightened her shoulders, and went back to work. Marcus Thompson had hidden $340,000 in offshore accounts, money he embezzled from the company over the past 4 years, through an elaborate scheme of fake invoices and ghost suppliers. Money he planned to use to start a new life with Vanessa, away from Rachel, away from any responsibility. What he didn't know was that Rachel discovered everything 5 months ago, and most importantly, she had proof, all of them meticulously organized, dated and verified. 3 days before the final hearing, Vanessa posted a photo on Instagram. She was wearing the engagement ring that Marcus had bought, a 3-carat diamond that cost $85,000. The caption read, "When you finally find a real man who knows what a real woman deserves." The comments were full of congratulations and heart emojis. But one person commented something different. An anonymous account, created just a few hours ago, wrote, "Beautiful ring. Enjoy it while it lasts. 3 days can change a lot." Vanessa showed the comment to Marcus, laughing. "Look at this. Someone is jealous." Marcus looked and felt a chill run down his spine. Something about that comment didn't seem random. "Probably some of Rachel's friends being bitter," Vanessa said, deleting the comment. "She must be eating herself with envy right now." But Marcus couldn't shake the feeling. That night he dreamed that he was in court and the judge was not who he should be. It was someone else. someone who looked at him with recognition and contempt. He woke up sweating. On the morning of the hearing, Rachel woke up at 5 in the morning, took a shower. He washed his hair. She put on light makeup. He wore a navy blue suit that he bought especially for the occasion. Simple but perfectly tailored. She looked in the mirror, and for the first time in weeks, she recognized the woman standing there. She wasn't the broken wife Marcus left behind. It was the Rachel from before him. Rachel who graduated with honors in accounting. The Rachel who uncovered 3 major corporate fraud schemes before she was 30. Rachel who never let anything go unnoticed. That Rachel was back, and she was ready. The King County Courthouse was quiet that Thursday morning. Rachel arrived 40 minutes before her scheduled time, carrying a brown leather briefcase that looked like it had seen better days. Henry was already there, talking to a bailiff near the entrance to the room. "Are you ready?" he asked as she approached. More than ever, Henry noticed something different about her. The posture, the look. She was no longer the broken woman who signed the divorce papers 2 weeks ago. It was someone else. Someone with a purpose. "Rachel, I need to ask you something," Henry said in a low voice. "This thing about you meeting Judge Morrison, do you guys have some kind of relationship that I should know about? Because if so, he's going to have to declare himself disqualified and—" "We studied together," Rachel interrupted him calmly. "Law school. He dropped out in his 2nd year to care for his sick mother. I stayed in accounting. We lost touch for years. We reconnected 6 months ago at an alumni event." She paused. 2 days after I found out Marcus was cheating on me." Henry blinked, processing. 6 months? Rachel, why didn't you ever mention that? "Because it wasn't relevant. Until now." She opened the folder and took out a sealed envelope. "When the time is right, you will turn this over to the judge. Not before, understand? What's in there?" "The truth." Rachel closed the folder. "That's all. The truth." Before Henry could respond, the courtroom doors opened, and Marcus walked in with Vanessa hanging on his arm like a trophy. She was wearing a tight white dress, 6-inch heels, and red carpet makeup. Marcus was wearing a black suit that Rachel recognized immediately. It was the suit she had given him as a gift on their last wedding anniversary. The irony almost made her laugh. "Look," Vanessa said loud enough to echo in the hallway. She even tried to dress up. How cute. Marcus didn't say anything, but his eyes met Rachel's for a second. Was there something there? Guilt, perhaps? Repentance? But he disappeared quickly when Vanessa pulled him across the hall, where Diane, his lawyer, was waiting with an expression of professional boredom. "Good morning, everyone," a deep voice echoed through the hallway. Everyone turned. Judge Richard Morrison was 52 years old, with perfectly coiffed gray hair and brown eyes, who seemed to see through any lie. He wore his black toga with natural authority, carrying a leather briefcase under his arm. As he passed Rachel, their eyes met for a split second. Nobody else noticed, but in that second, volumes were said. "Let's begin," the judge said, entering the room. Everyone followed in silence. The courtroom was smaller than those shown in the films. No jury, no dramatic audience, just one table on each side, the judge's bench raised, and a bailiff standing next to it. The court secretary was already typing before everyone had even sat down. Marcus and Vanessa sat on the right side, with Diane between them organizing papers. Rachel and Henry occupied the left side. The distance between the two sides could not be more than 3 meters, but it seemed like an abyss. "Case number 2024 DV8847, Judge Morrison began, flipping through the documents. "Thompson versus Thompson divorce. I see here that we already have a property division agreement signed by both parties, is that correct?" "Yes, Your Excellency," Diane replied, standing up. "Yes," Henry confirmed. "Well," the judge continued, "then this should be quick. I'll just review the terms of the agreement to make sure everything is in order and—" "Your Honor," Henry stood up. "Before proceeding, my client would like to make an additional statement to the court. Something that was not in the original documents, but that is pertinent to the case." Marcus and Diane exchanged confused looks. Vanessa frowned. Judge Morrison inclined his head slightly. "What kind of statement?" Rachel stood up, hands steady on the edge of the table. His heart beat like a war drum, but his voice came out calm. "Your Excellency, during the process of separating assets, I discovered financial irregularities that were not disclosed by my ex-husband. Irregularities that directly affect the fair division of assets." Diane was on her feet immediately. "Objection. Any financial issues have already been resolved in the settlement. My client has disclosed all of his assets as required by law." "All?" Rachel said, turning to Marcus for the first time. "Really everyone, Marcus?" The color of his face changed, just a little, but it changed. "I don't know what you're talking about," he said, his voice coming out higher than he intended. Rachel opened her folder and took out a stack of documents organized with colorful clips. "Your Honor, I have here bank statements from 3 offshore accounts in my ex-husband's name, accounts that were not mentioned in any of this divorce documents. In total, these accounts contain approximately $340,000. The silence in the room was deafening. Marcus was white. Diane looked like she had been hit by a train. Vanessa looked at Marcus with an expression that wavered between shock and fury.
This is ridiculous, Marcus finally shouted, slamming his hand on the table. She's making this up. She's desperate because I've moved on and she can't accept it. Making it up? Rachel said calmly. She walked to the front and handed copies of the documents to the judge, Diane, and placed a stack in front of Marcus. Bank of the Cayman Islands. Account number 4782-9933-1124. Opened March 2021. Monthly deposits ranging from $5,000 to $15,000.
Marcus took the papers with shaking hands. His eyes scanned the pages, and what little color was left in his face completely disappeared. Like you, he started, but stopped. How did I get this? Rachel finished the sentence for him. I'm a forensic accountant, Marcus. Did you really think I wasn't going to investigate when you started coming home late smelling of expensive perfume I never wore? When you suddenly needed business trips every weekend? She took a step closer. You underestimated me, just like you always have. Judge Morrison banged his gavel lightly. Order. Mr. Thompson, these charges are extremely serious. Do you have anything to say? Diane pulled Marcus back into the chair and whispered something frantically in his ear. He shook his head repeatedly, sweating. My client needs a moment to consult with his attorney, Diane said, her voice strained. Of course, the judge said, but Mr. Thompson, I need to warn you that hiding assets in a divorce proceeding is not only illegal, it can result in criminal charges. If you have something to admit, now would be the time. Vanessa stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Wait, Marcus, you told me you didn't have any money hidden. You said the cow took half of everything. Vanessa, sit down and be quiet, Marcus hissed. No, I gave up everything for you. My job, my apartment. You said you were rich. Her tears weren't tears of sadness. They were pure anger. You made me look like an idiot. Ma'am, the judge said firmly, either you sit down or you will have to leave the room. Vanessa Agar. He grabbed his bag and stomped out, slamming the door so hard it made the secretary jump. Marcus put his head in his hands. Rachel sat down again next to Henry, who was gaping. He leaned in and whispered, How long have you known this? 5 months, she replied softly. I was waiting for the right moment. Why didn't you tell me sooner? Rachel looked at him with those green eyes that now seemed to be made of steel. Because I needed to be absolutely sure, and because, she paused, I needed to know if there was more. More? Henry repeated. Rachel, what else did you find out? She smiled. A small, sad, but determined smile. You'll see. Judge Morrison flipped through the documents Rachel had handed over, his expression growing grimmer with each page. Finally, he looked at Marcus. Mr. Thompson, I'm going to give you one last chance to be honest with this court. Do these accounts exist? Marcus took a deep breath. Diane whispered something, but he ignored her. There are, he admitted, voice barely audible. The secretary stopped typing for a second, surprised. And you intentionally omitted them from the divorce documents? Silence. Mr. Thompson, I need an answer. Yes, Marcus finally said. Yes, I omitted it. Judge Morrison closed the folder with a heavy sigh. Mr. Thompson, do you understand that this completely changes this case? You not only lied to this court, but you also committed financial fraud against your ex-wife. I can explain. The explanation can wait, the judge interrupted, because before we go any further, there is another issue that needs to be addressed. He looked directly at Rachel. Ms. Thompson, you mentioned irregularities, in the plural. Are the offshore accounts everything? Rachel stood up again, and for the first time in the entire hearing, her voice shook, not out of fear, of pain. No, Your Excellency, that's not all. Rachel took a deep breath before continuing. His hands no longer shook. Your Excellency, the offshore accounts are only part of the problem. The real question is, where did this money come from? Marcus raised his head sharply. Rachel, don't. For the past 4 years, Rachel continued, completely ignoring him. My ex-husband held the position of regional sales manager at Hartman Industries. He was responsible for approving vendor contracts and processing payments. She took another stack of documents from the folder. In those 4 years, he created 17 shell companies. Companies that on paper provided equipment and services to Hartman. Companies that don't exist. Diane was back on her feet. Your Excellency, these accusations go beyond the scope of a divorce. This is corporate fraud, Judge Morrison finished, his voice sharp as ice. This is corporate fraud, and embezzlement, and money laundering. He looked at Marcus with an expression that would make anyone flinch. Mr. Thompson, do you understand the gravity of what is being alleged here? Marcus was visibly shaking now. She can't prove any of this. It's just papers. Papers, Rachel repeated, almost laughing. Marcus, I spent 5 months tracking every penny, every fake invoice, every transfer, every lie. She placed more documents on the judge's desk. Here are invoices signed by you. Here are the CNPJs of the shell companies, all registered in the names of people who don't even know they were used. And here, she picked up a separate red folder. Here is proof that you embezzled $340,000 from the company over the last 4 years. The room was completely silent. Even the secretary stopped typing. Henry was looking at Rachel, as if seeing her for the first time. He had worked with her on the divorce for months, and never, not once, had she mentioned any of this. Rachel, Henry whispered, why didn't you tell me I could have? Because I didn't want a deal, she said quietly, still looking at Marcus. I wanted justice. Judge Morrison flipped through the documents, his expression growing grimmer with each page. Finally, he looked at the bailiff. Call the district attorney's office. Now, Your Excellency, please, Marcus began, his voice breaking. I can give you the money back. I can fix this. Please, I have a career, a reputation. You did, Rachel said, and her voice was so cold it made Marcus close his mouth. You had a career, you had a reputation, you had a wife who loved you. And why did you throw it all away? Because I wasn't thin enough? Because you found someone younger, prettier? The tears finally came, but she didn't wipe them away. You humiliated me, Marcus. In front of lawyers, in front of friends. You made me feel like I was worthless. Rachel, I'm so sorry. No, she cut him off. You're not sorry. You're only sorry because you got caught. She turned to the judge. Your Excellency, there is one more thing. Henry closed his eyes, as if he knew there was another bomb about to go off. The woman who left here a few minutes ago, Vanessa Chen, she's not just my ex-husband's mistress. Rachel took the last document out of the folder, the sealed envelope she had given to Henry earlier. She worked as an administrative assistant at Hartman Industries from 2022 to 2024. Her work included processing payment approvals that crossed Marcus's desk. Marcus turned white as a sheet. No, Diane whispered, immediately understanding the implications. Yes, Rachel confirmed. Vanessa not only knew about the scheme, she helped execute it. She processed the payments for the shell companies. She forged supervisors' signatures. She was complicit in everything. Rachel opened the envelope and spread out printed emails on the judge's desk. Here are exchanges of messages between them coordinating the diversions, messages they were foolish enough to send via the company's corporate emails. Judge Morrison read the emails silently. One read, Baby, I processed another $12K today. No one noticed. Soon we'll have enough to get out of this shitty town and leave the whale behind. The whale, that's how they referred to Rachel. The judge closed his eyes for a moment, taking deep breaths to maintain his composure. When he opened them again, there was something there other than judicial authority. There was personal anger. Mr. Thompson, he said, voice dangerously calm. Do you know who I am? Marcus blinked, confused. Your Excellency, my name is Richard Morrison. Before I became a judge, I was married. For 23 years. My ex-wife was a wonderful woman. Smart, funny, dedicated. He paused. She was also overweight, and for the last 5 years of our marriage, I made her feel like that mattered more than anything else she was. I betrayed her. I humiliated her. I destroyed her emotionally. His voice trembled slightly. She took her own life 3 years after our divorce. The room was completely frozen. Rachel closed her eyes, tears flowing freely now. She knew this story. That's why she reconnected with Richard 6 months ago. Because he was the only person who understood her pain from a unique perspective, from the side of the one who caused the damage and lived with the guilt. So when I see a case like this, the judge continued, looking directly at Marcus, when I see a man who not only cheated and humiliated his wife but also stole from her, lied to the court and committed federal crimes, I don't just see a divorce, I see a pattern of abuse that needs to be stopped. He hit the hammer, ruling. The original divorce agreement is void. Ms. Thompson will be entitled to 100% of the marital assets, including the home, vehicles, and all known bank accounts. The offshore accounts will be frozen immediately, and the money will be returned to Hartman Industries as restitution. Your Excellency, Diane tried to protest. I'm not finished yet. The judge continued. Mr. Thompson, you are in contempt of court for concealing assets in a legal proceeding. I am issuing an order for your immediate arrest until the prosecution rules on the corporate fraud charges. Bailiff, please. The bailiff approached Marcus, handcuffs in hand. No, no, no. Marcus began to panic, standing up abruptly. You can't do that. You know her, he pointed at Rachel. You're friends. That's a conflict of interest. We've been studying together for 30 years, the judge said calmly. We recently reconnected at a social event. No personal or professional relationships that would constitute a conflict of interest. I checked with the ethics committee before taking this case. He looked at Marcus with utter contempt. And even if there were, the evidence against you is so overwhelming that any judge in the country would make the same decision. The cuffs clicked on Marcus's wrists. He looked at Rachel, and in that moment, she saw everything in him: regret, despair, fear, but it was too late. "Rachel, please," he begged as he was led away. "For what we had. Please." She didn't respond. He just watched as he was taken out of the room. Diane gathered her papers in silence, avoiding everyone's eyes. Before leaving, she stopped briefly next to Rachel. "You planned this from the beginning, didn't you?" "No," Rachel answered honestly. "At first, I just wanted to understand why I wasn't enough, but when I started looking for answers, I found crimes, and I couldn't ignore it." Diane nodded slowly and left. Henry sat silently, still processing everything. "Rachel, did you know Judge Morrison had this story? That's why you—" "I didn't choose Richard to be the judge," Rachel said. "That was random, but when I saw that would be him, I knew Marcus would show no mercy for someone who understood what he did." She wiped the tears from her face. "Richard has been in therapy for years because of what happened to his ex-wife. He dedicates his life now to making sure others don't cause the same kind of harm." Judge Morrison stepped down from the bench and approached Rachel. For a moment, judicial protocol disappeared. It was just two old friends who survived different tragedies. "You did the right thing," he said quietly, "and I'm sorry it's come to this." "Me too," Rachel whispered. Outside the courtroom, Vanessa was being approached by two police detectives. Someone, probably the judge, and had called to warn her about her involvement. She screamed, cried, accused Marcus of ruining her life. Detectives placed her in the squad car as she screamed obscenities that echoed through the parking lot. Rachel watched from afar, taking no joy in revenge, just an exhausted emptiness. Sarah appeared out of nowhere, enveloping Rachel in a tight hug. "I saw the news. Jesus, Rachel, you did it." "I did it," Rachel said, but her voice was hollow, because the truth was this: she had won. Marcus would face years in prison. Vanessa too. Rachel would get back everything that was rightfully hers. Justice has been served, but in the end, she had still lost 8 years of her life. 8 years of loving a man who never valued her. 8 years she would never get back, and that was the part that no court ruling could fix. 6 months later, Rachel was sitting in her new office, a bright space on the 12th floor of a downtown corporate building. The sign on the door read, "Rachel Turner, Independent Forensic Consultant." No more Thompson. She had reverted to her maiden name 3 weeks after the trial. The phone rang. It was the fourth prospect of the week. "Rachel Turner's office," she answered, her voice professional but warm. "Hi, my name is Jennifer Park. My lawyer gave me your contact information. I'm going through a messy divorce and I suspect my husband is hiding assets. Could you help me?" Rachel smiled slightly. She had received dozens of such calls since her story became public. Local media covered the Thompson case extensively. "Woman discovers $500,000 fraud scheme during divorce," was the paper's headline. His name quickly spread among family lawyers as the person to call when something wasn't right. "Of course I can help," Rachel replied. "Let's schedule an appointment and you tell me everything." After setting the appointment and hanging up, Rachel leaned back in her chair and looked out the window. The city was alive below. Cars, people, life happening. For so long she had felt trapped, invisible, insignificant. Now, for the first time in years, I felt like I belonged to this movement. His cell phone vibrated. A message from Sarah. "Lunch today? I have news." Rachel smiled and replied, 12:30, usual place. She got up and walked over to the small mirror that had hung on the wall. The woman looking back was still 1.65 meter tall. She still weighed it, now 89 pounds. Some lost through stress, some because she was finally eating healthily, not to please anyone, but because she wanted to feel good. She still wore a size 44. Her hips were still wide. Their thighs still touched when they walked. And she was learning to be at peace with that. Therapy helped. Twice a week with Dr. Simmons, a psychologist specializing in relationship trauma. At first, Rachel cried in every session. Then he started talking. And finally, he began to listen. "Your value was never determined by Marcus," Dr. Simmons had said in the last session. "He just made you believe he was. But you were always valuable. Smart, capable, strong. Those things were always in you." Rachel was starting to believe it. At the restaurant, Sarah was already waiting, practically jumping in her chair in excitement. "Okay, you won't believe what happened. Are you pregnant?" Rachel guessed, smiling. "No, better. I got the promotion, senior marketing manager," Sarah shouted, drawing curious looks from nearby tables. "And there's more. Remember Dave, that guy from the IT department? The cute nerd? That's right, he asked me out." Sarah was beaming. "Rachel, things are finally falling into place, and it all started when I saw you fighting. You inspired me to go after what I deserved too." Rachel felt her eyes water. "Sarah, no, really. You could have broken down. You could have accepted that ridiculous deal and moved on quietly. But you fought. You stood up and fought. Sarah took Rachel's hand across the table. You are the bravest person I know. They had lunch, laughed, cried a little, and for 2 hours Rachel felt completely normal. Not the woman in the scandal, not the cheated wife, just Rachel. When he returned to the office, there was an email waiting. The sender made her stomach turn. Greenfield State Penitentiary. It was from Marcus. Rachel hesitated, the cursor hovering over the email for a long minute. Part of her wanted to delete it without reading it, but the other part, the part that needed closure, clicked. Rachel, I know I have no right to write to you. I know you'll probably delete this without reading it, but I need to try. I was sentenced to 8 years for corporate fraud and money laundering. Vanessa took 5. The company sued them both for damages, so even after I leave, I'll be paying debt for the rest of my life. I lose sleep every night thinking about what I did, not just the crimes, although those haunt me too. But what did I do to you? How I treated you? The things I said? The way I made you feel? I have no excuse. Mandatory therapy here in prison made me face some hard truths about myself. I was insecure, selfish, cruel, and I projected all of this onto you because it was easier to blame you than to face my own flaws. You were beautiful when we met. You are beautiful now, and I was too blind and stupid and monstrous to see it. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to know. You were always more than enough. I was never enough for you. I regret every day I wasted without seeing this. Marcus. Rachel read the email 3 times. Then he closed the laptop and went to the window again. She felt no triumph. He didn't feel angry. He felt nothing but peace. A strange and unexpected peace. Marcus was facing the consequences. Vanessa too. Justice was served in court. But the real justice, the only one that really mattered, was happening within herself. She was forgiving herself for staying so long. He was forgiving himself for not having seen the signs sooner. She was forgiving herself for believing, even for a moment, that there was something wrong with her. Because there was never anything wrong with her. 3 weeks later, Rachel was at a forensic accounting conference in Chicago. During a coffee break, a man approached her. Tall, dark hair with gray strands, gentle smile. Are you Rachel Turner, the one from the Thompson case? She tensed automatically, prepared for invasive questions or unsolicited pity. Sorry, he said, noticing her reaction. That sounded stalkerish. I'm Daniel Reeves. I work in corporate auditing. I read about your case and was impressed with the investigative work. It's not every day that someone manages to uncover such an elaborate scheme. Rachel relaxed a little. Thank you. It was challenging, I guess. Look, I know this might sound strange, but my firm is looking for consultants who specialize in marital fraud. It's a growing area, and you clearly have a talent for it. Would you be interested in talking about a possible partnership? They talked for 40 minutes. They exchanged cards. They scheduled a meeting for the following week. When Rachel returned to the hotel that night, she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Same woman, same body. But something fundamental had changed. She was no longer waiting for someone to validate her. He was no longer measuring his worth by other people's opinions. She was no longer hiding or shrinking to fit the narrow expectations of a society that judges women by inches and pounds. She was Rachel Turner, 35 years, forensic accountant, survivor, entrepreneur, and yes, plus size. And she was perfectly fine with all of those things. A year after the trial, Rachel was standing in the same courtroom, but this time as an expert witness in another marital fraud case. Judge Morrison presided again. After her testimony, he called her into his office. How are you? He asked, genuine concern in his eyes. Well, Rachel replied, and for once it was true. Really fine. I'm proud of you. The way you've rebuilt your life. He paused. My ex-wife didn't have that chance, but seeing you thrive somehow gives me hope that I helped make a difference, even if it's too late for her. Richard, Rachel said gently, what happened to your wife was a tragedy, but you've spent the last few years making sure other people don't suffer the same fate. That matters. That means something. He nodded, eyes shining. Thanks. Rachel walked out of court that day with crystal clarity. She couldn't change the past. He couldn't get back the 8 years he gave to Marcus. I couldn't undo the pain, the humiliation, the tears, but she could choose what to do with the future. And she chose to live, really live, not in the shadow of someone's rejection, but as in the light of your own strength. Because the real lesson of this story wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about legal justice. It wasn't even about exposing villains. It was about remembering that your value has never been, and never will be, determined by someone else's ability to see it. Marcus looked at Rachel and saw only numbers on a scale, but he was blind, because what he failed to see was a woman of unwavering courage, a woman of sharp intelligence, a woman who, when knocked down, didn't just get up. She rose higher than she had ever been before. And that's the difference between people like Marcus and people like Rachel. Some people measure value in centimeters and kilograms. Others measure it in character, strength, and heart. And in the end, These are the only measurements that really matter. Rachel was in the parking lot when her phone rang. It was Jennifer Park, the customer who had called months ago. "Rachel, you won't believe it. We found his accounts. Everything you told me to look for was there. My lawyer said you're a genius." Rachel smiled. "I'm glad we were able to help." "Help? You saved me. I was about to accept a terrible deal because I thought I had no choice, but you showed me that I had power, that I could fight." After hanging up, Rachel got into her car and drove home. No longer the small apartment, but a cozy 2-bedroom house that she bought with her recovered money. A house with a garden, a house with space to breathe, a house that was hers alone. She prepared dinner, turned on soft music, and sat on the porch with a cup of tea. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink, and for the first time in a long time, Rachel was happy. Genuinely, deeply happy. Not because he had taken revenge, not because Marcus was in prison, not because she had won, but because she finally understood something that took her 35 years to learn. She was always enough. It has always been valuable. She was always worthy of love and respect, not despite who she was, but exactly because of who she was. And no one, absolutely no one, could take that away from her anymore. If you like this story of overcoming injustice, subscribe to the channel for more stories that will move and inspire you, because everyone deserves to be seen for who they really are. Extraordinary.